Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Yud Aleph. Yeah, sure. Daf Yud Aleph of Masechta Yevamos. Daf 11 Masechta Yevamos. Friends, I just took an Advil before just an update. I took an Advil before I started recording. I think that's going to be the new normal. I found out what happened to the ibuprofen. Apparently it's in a different country right now. Anyway, but I bought Advil. I might just need to be taking an Advil like an hour before. I don't know. I hope I'm just not doing permanent brain damage. But what I'm kind of hoping is that the opposite is true. That I'm breaking my brain apart, but it's going to get stronger. I'm definitely hoping that that's what's going to happen. Is I'm going to come out the other side with a stronger brain. I'll call upon him. So today we continue discussing the machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish that I butchered yesterday at the end, regarding when Shimon does chalitza with Sarah and then remarries her, that kind of a thing. And then we move on to things like what happens if Rivka is a sota. What happens with Sarah? Fun sugyas, friends. Okay, so I think what makes sense is that we'll do that last part of the Gemara from yesterday. Let's do it over because that really leads into the first part of the Gemara from today. So I think that makes sense. What time is it? Let's see. Okay. Oh, okay. Wait, what? No, that's wrong. 1 second. All right. So we had seen yesterday machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish about. So you have, of course, Reuven. Reuven's married to Sarah. Reuven dies. Now Sarah, kind of, I don't exactly know, what's the word I should be saying? I don't know, Sarah kind of is should I just say has a Zika? A technical term, maybe? Sure. Yeah, why not? Let's use technical terms. So, Reuven is married to Sarah. Reuven dies. Now, Sarah has a Zika with Shimon. Now, that means that Shimon can either do Yibum or Chalitza. Now, in this particular case, Shimon does Chalitza with Sarah. So the question is, what is sort of the status between Sarah and sort of the brothers now that Chalitza has been done, right? Meaning, once Sarah has a Zika with the brothers, and then Shimon kind of steps up to the plate and takes responsibility and he makes a move, in this case it was Chalitza. So now the Chalitza has been done, sort of this whole saga is behind them. Now, theoretically, what is the relationship between the brothers and Sarah now? What happens if somebody were to sleep with her? Or to marry her, whatever it is. So, Rabbi Yochanan says, look, everybody's just a lav, right? That the pasuk had said, Asher lo yivne es beis achiv, right? That when they do chalitza, this is okay. That the fellow is not going to build his brother's house. Kevin shalobana shuv lo yivne. And once already you sort of get passed up on the opportunity once, that's it. It's not good. It's done. Now, if Shimon would now go and nonetheless remarry Sarah, even though he's not allowed to, it would just be a lav. And Rabbi Yochanan says that just like with Shimon, it's this lav, right, of Kevin Shalobana Shivlu Yivne. So the same thing applies to the brothers as well. Because according to Rabbi Yochanan, Shimon is just stepping up to the plate as the representative of the brothers. And therefore, just like Shimon's relationship with Sarah is that of a lav, if he marries her, the same thing applies to the brothers. Whereas Reish Lakish argues with Rabbi Yochanan and says, no, sure, the brother is a lav, but the other brothers, Levi and Yehuda and friends, so once Shimon did chalitza with Sarah, that's it, it's over. Sarah, in relation to Levi and Yehuda and friends, is simply the wife of their brother Reuven who died. Eishes ach. Chiyuv kares. So that's the machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. So now, I hope that this Advil kicks in soon because my brain is already starting to say, So it's a struggle between my brain and the Advil. So here we go. So Eis Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. So now Rabbi Yochanan said, oh, that's good. I have the Advil box right in front of me, so I can look at it as I'm recording, and it'll give me chizik. Okay, thank you, Advil box. So Eis Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish. So Rabbi Yochanan, who says that the relationship between Sarah and the brothers is that of a lav, so he says to Rish Lakish, hey, Rish Lakish, what do you do with this brisa? Acholetz livimto, that Shimon, who does chalitza with Sarah, because of Ikitsha, and then he marries her nonetheless. Vames, and then Shimon dies. So now there's, so what happens vis-a-vis Levi and Sarah? So tzricha chalitza. Oh, so it says that the chalitza needs to happen between Levi and Sarah. Right? Tzricha chalitza min ha'achin. She needs to do chalitza from one of the brothers. B'shlam l'didi, and says Rabbi Yochanan, you see, according to me, the amina that I said chayve lavin ninu, that the relationship between the brothers and Sarah is that of simply a lav. Hainu de tzricha chalitza min ha'achin. That's why there needs to be chalitza, right? As Rabbi Yochanan had said, yesterday. What did he say? No. Oh gosh, where are we? Right? That chiyuvei lavin, they still need to do yibum and chalitza, and therefore, Rabbi Yochanan says, you see, if Shimon dies, the other brothers, let's say Levi, still has to do chalitza. That sounds like the relationship between them is simply a lav. It's simply losa, I say. But according to you, Rish Lakish, that you say that the relationship between Levi and Sarah is that of chiyuv karis, well, that makes it an erva. In erva, you don't have to do chalitza or yibum at all. With the timing, to which the Gemara responds and says, hey, but Rabbi Yochanan, according to you, ema seifa. If we continue reading that very same brisa, it says, Omad echo min ha'achin v'kidsha, if one of the brothers then was mekadesh Sarah, so this means that if Shimon never remarried her, right? So what happened was Ruvain was married to Sarah. Ruvain died. Shimon then did chalitza with Sarah. Now what happens? Levi comes along and marries Sarah. Ein la olav klum. It's absolutely nothing. There doesn't need to be a get. There doesn't need to be nothing. Absolutely nothing. So Rish Lakish responds, says, if simply the only relationship between Levi and Sarah was that it was simply a lav, well then, amayin la olav klum. Then why is there no relationship at all? Why doesn't she even need a get at all? If it was just a lav, they would still technically be married. She would have to get a get. So therefore, Rabbi Yochanan, it's not so simple just to say that it's a lav, because then I don't understand the seifa. So Amar of Sheishes, Seifa Ason Rabbi Akiva, well, you could still say that it's a lav, just that the Seifa is like Rabbi Akiva, the Amr in Kiddushin Tovsin b'chayve lavin, that there is no Kiddushin by chayve lavin, and therefore, if between Levi and Sarah was a lav, so then Kiddushin wouldn't work, and that's why there is absolutely no relationship there. V'lesen the divrei Rabbi Akiva ein lo olav klum. So why not just say, well, according to Rabbi Akiva, there's no relationship? If it specifically is opinion kasha, it's a question. Okay, fine. So givaldik. So we just had this brisa which says that that said two things, right? There was a reisha and there was a seifa that seemed to be sort of contradictory, right? The reisha is saying that if Shimon did chalitza and then remarried Sarah and then dies, so then there would need to be a chalitza between Levi and Sarah, implying that it's a lav. But then the seifa was saying that if instead of Shimon remarrying after chalitza, it was Levi who married, there would be her after Shimon already did chalitza, then there would be no relationship there whatsoever, which sounds more like Rish Lakish. We said that the seifa was Rabbi Akiva Beseder, so it could still be a lav. Fine. But now we see another way to understand this brisa. Rav Ashi sarvala k'Rish Lakish mitaritz l'Reb Shimon, Ravina sarvala k'Reb Yochanan mitaritz l'Rabbanan. So Rav Ashi explained this brisa as being like Rish Lakish, and also bringing on the opinion of Reb Shimon in the situation of Eishes Och Shlohaya Ba'olamo. Right? Am I saying that right? Eishes Och Shlohaya Ba'olamo. Right? The wife of his brother who did not overlap with him. Ravina Savala Reb Yochanan, whereas Ravina holds like Reb Yochanan that it's a lav. Mutaritz like Rabbanan and answers it like how the rabbis understand the sugya of Eishes Achiv Shlohaya Be'olamo. Do you guys remember that machlokas from, I believe it was 2 days ago? That if you have Ruvain was married to Sarah, right? Ruvain dies. Shimon then does Yibum with Sarah. At which point Levi is born once Shimon has already done Yibum with Sarah. Shimon then dies. So according to the Chachamim, Levi would not do Yibum with Sarah because Sarah is Eishes Achiv Shlohai Ba'olamo. Sarah is the wife of Levi's brother Ruvain, who had died before Levi was born, and therefore, according to the rabbis, Levi would not do Yibum with Sarah. Now, according to Reb Shimon, however, look, when Levi was born, Shimon was married to Sarah. When Shimon dies, so Levi does Yibum with, or at least Chalitza with Sarah. So, meaning, right, who cares? It's not so relevant that once upon a time she was married to Ruvain before he was born. When he was born, Shimon was already married to Sarah. Shimon dies, so Levi would at least do chalitza with Sarah. That was the machlokas between Reb Shimon and the Chachamim vis-a-vis Eishes Achiv Shlohai Ba'olamo. So third line of Yud Aleph Mud Aleph, Rav Ashi Savla Rish Lakish. So we said that Rav Ashi holds like Rish Lakish that the relationship between Sarah and meaning, so back into the situation where Ruvain is married to Sarah, Ruvain dies, and then Shimon does chalitza with Sarah. So the question is, right, the relationship between Sarah and the rest of the brothers. And now we're gonna explain the brisa. So let's see. So Rav Ashi Savla Rish Lakish. So Rav Ashi holds like Rish Lakish. Let's see that there's a chiyuv. I don't know what I just said a second ago, but that there's a chiyuv karis between Sarah and the brothers. So Mutaritz like Reb Shimon, and he also explains like Reb Shimon. Let's see. So the brisa had said Hacholitz liivimto. So Shimon did chalitza with Sarah, v'chazu v'kidsha, and then after he did chalitza with Sarah, he then married Sarah afterwards, even though he was not allowed to, right? As the pasuk had said, once he gave up on the opportunity once, so he can't do it anymore. But he did it nonetheless. He remarried her. Fine. So tzricha chalitza min ha'achin. So we said that. Well, so again, so and then he dies, right? Exactly, right? And then Shimon dies. So we say tzricha chalitza min ha'achin. So Sarah needs to do chalitza with Levi. Now, okay, so that sounds like it's a lav, right? But Ravina is saying that it's like Rish Lakish, who says that it's a chiyuv karis. Let's see. So man achin. So who are these brothers that we're talking about? Achin ha-yilodim. That is Kiman Reb Shimon. It's like Reb Shimon. That is talking about brothers that were born after the fact, and it's like Reb Shimon, meaning. So what happened? Ruvain was married to Sarah. Ruvain dies. Shimon then does chalitza with Sarah. And after doing chalitza with Sarah, he then marries Sarah. And then Levi is born. Which means that at the point that Levi is born, so Shimon's married to Sarah. Which means that when Shimon now dies, who's Sarah? Sarah was Levi's brother Shimon's wife. Kilu, it's not a situation of Eishes Achiv Shlohai Ba'olamo, which there would not be a chiyuv of Yibum or Chalitza. No, rather, Levi was born after Shimon had already remarried Sarah, in which case, like Reb Shimon, when Shimon dies, Levi would have to do chalitza with Sarah. Okay. Now, continues the Brisa. Amad echad minan noladim v'kidsha. Now, if one of the brothers who was already born and was mekadesh her, ein la'alav klum kiman k'rish lakish, then there's no relationship like Rish Lakish, right? So let's say like this, and this is the opinion of Rav Ashi, right? So Rav Ashi understands it like Reb Shimon and explains it like Rish Lakish, meaning. So let's say you have Ruvain, and then, okay, so let's say there was Ruvain. Ruvain was married to Sarah. Now there's two other brothers, Shimon and Levi. They're all alive and everything like that. So Ruvain is married to Sarah. There's also Shimon and Levi. Ruvain dies. Shimon then does chalitza with Shimon does chalitza with Sarah. And what we're saying is, the Sefer was saying, if Levi would now go and marry Sarah, who Shimon had already done chalitza with, so then Levi would be chayav, then there would be no anything. There wouldn't need to be a get or anything, because that's a chiyuv kares, it's an erva. And that was the Sefer, right? When the Sefer says, Amad echam and achin, v'kidsha, so in klum, so that's if Levi, who was already alive during this whole thing, went and married Sarah, so that's a chiyuv kares, and there's no requirement of a get or anything like that. But in the Reisha, which is talking about Ruvain dies, Shimon does chalitza, and then afterwards remarries Sarah, and then afterwards marries Sarah after chalitza. If then Yehuda is born, so then when Shimon dies, Yehuda would have to do chalitza with Sarah, because when Yehuda was born, Shimon was married to Sarah, and there would be a chiyuv chalitza over there, and that is how Rav Ashi understands the Brisa, that he explains the Reisha being like, understanding like Reb Shimon's take on Eishes Achiv Shloi Ba'olamo, and the Seifa being like Rish Lakish, who says that the relationship between Levi and Sarah would be that of Kares, and therefore there would be no need for a get or anything like that. Now, Ravina, so that was how Rav Ashi understands the Brisa. Ravina Savar like Rabbi Yochanan. Ravina holds like Rabbi Yochanan, who says that the relationship between Levi and Sarah would be that of a lav. So Umitaritz la liba derabanan, and understands Eishes Achiv Shlohai Ba'olamo like the Rabbanon, like the rabbis, and therefore he explains the Brisa like this: Hacholitz li yivimto, that if Shimon did chalitza with Sarah, v'chazer v'kidsha, and then remarried Sarah. So and then Shimon dies. So tzricha chalitza. So then Levi is going to have to do chalitza with Sarah, because the relationship between Levi and Sarah is that of a lav, and therefore you have to do tzricha chalitza min achin. They have to do chalitza with the brothers, man achin anoladim. So that is the brothers who are already born, i.e. Levi, who was born the whole time, K'man ki Rabbi Yochanan. That is like Rabbi Yochanan, who says that the relationship between Levi and Sarah is that of a lav, and therefore when Shimon dies, Levi has to do chalitza. Amod echad b'nai yilodim v'kidsha. But now, what happens if even if Shimon would have, let's say, remarried Sarah after chalitza, right? But then Yehuda is born. So now what happens is, nonetheless, that would still be a situation of Eishes Achiv Shlohai Ba'olamo, which means that there would be a chiyuv kares, in which case there would be no relationship there, right? So Amad Echaman Min Yilodim, if Yehuda, who was born, after all this, after the chalitza happened, v'kidsha, and then Yehuda was mekadesh Sarah ein la olav klum kiman kraban. And then there's no relationship there between Yehuda and Sarah whatsoever, like the rabbis who understand that even if Levi is, Yehuda in this case, if Yehuda is born even after so Rashi says even if Shimon were to have then remarried Sarah after Chalitza, and which means that when Yehuda is born, Shimon's now married to Sarah, nonetheless, still that would be a situation of, right, Yehuda being, right, that would still be a situation for Yehuda and Sarah of Eishes Achiv Shloi Ba'olamo, and therefore would be a Chiyuv Kares, and therefore that's why the Sefer says Ein Lo Olav Klum, that there's no relationship there whatsoever, there is no requirement of a get or anything like that. Okay. Now, Idmar was stated Haba al Yevamos. Okay, so let's say you have Ruvain, and he's married to Sarah, and then Ruvain dies, and Shimon does Yibum with Sarah. And then it says, Uva echad min ha'achinat Sarasa. And then one of the brothers marries the Tzara, Givaldi. So again, so let's start over. So you have Ruvain. Ruvain is married to Sarah and to Rivka. Okay. Ruvain dies. Okay. Shimon does Yibum with, let's say, Sarah. Okay. So now Shimon does Yibum with Sarah. Comes Levi, and then Levi marries Rivka. So, okay. So that's the situation. So again, so Itmar was stated Abba Yevamos. So Shimon does Yibum with Sarah, and then Levi then marries Rivka. Pligi bar Ravacha v'Ravina, and there's machlokas between Ravacha and Ravina. Chad Omer b'Karis v'Chad Omer be'Esei. So one opinion is that, well, Levi is chayev Karis for sleeping with Rivka. The other opinion is that he violates mitzvah's essay, that he's over on a mitzvah's essay. Okay, let's go weiter for a second. Mandamer b'karis k'Rish Lakish, mandamer be'essay k'Reb Yochanan. The mandamer says it's karis is like Rish Lakish. The mandamer says it's an essay, it's like Reb Yochanan. What does this even mean? So the karis, let's start with karis. That's easier to understand. Or at least there's no chiddush yet. Like we can kind of, we have everything we need to understand that. Which is that Ruvain is married to Sarah and to Rivka. When Shimon does Yibum with Sarah, so that's it. It's over. Yibum has been done. That is that. Rivka now, with regard to Levi, is simply somebody who was once upon a time married to Levi's brother Ruvain, i.e. Eish Esach, and therefore it's a chiyuv karis. So that's like, and that would be how, and that would be like Rish Lakish. Let's go weiter for a second. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan would say that there's an asay going on. What does that mean? So as Rashi points out, right, the pasuk says, "Bayis echad ubone ve'ein bone beis batim." Right, what does it say? It says, "Rashal yivne as beis achiv." That he build. That the whole point of Yibum is to build the house of his brother Reuven, and he builds one house. He doesn't build two houses, right? And then Rashi says, "V'lava ba michlal asay asay." That right, when it says, so build one house, so build one house, don't build two houses. So it's a los asay that comes from the implication of the asay, which is build one house. So build one house, don't build a second house, and therefore we treat it as though it's an asay, since it comes from the implication of an asay. So now, therefore, so vis-a-vis Shimon, so Shimon does Yibum with Sarah. Once Shimon does Yibum with Sarah, he doesn't do Yibum anymore with Rivka, because he only does, right, Bais Echad Ubonim V'lo Shtei Batim. You do Yibum once, you don't do Yibum twice. And as we said earlier today and yesterday, that according to Rabbi Yochanan, Shimon is acting as the shaliach, as the representative, as the messengers of the brothers. And therefore the same rule that applies to Shimon applies to Levi as well. And therefore if Shimon were to do Yibum with Rivka as well, so it would be over in an essay, not a chiyuv kares or anything like that. Therefore the same thing would apply to Levi as well. And therefore, so according to Rabbi Yochanan, who says that Shimon is really just being the messenger in his doing in doing Yibum with Sarah, he's being the messenger of the brothers. So then the same halacha would applies to all the brothers, and therefore just like if Rivka with relation to Shimon is an essay, so the same thing applies to Levi as well. What do you want me to tell you? So let's read that again. So Hitmar was stated Abal Yevamos. So if Shimon does Yibum with Sareh, and then Levi then sleeps with Rivke, so one says that Levi, is Chayiv Karis because once Shimon does Yibum with Sareh, so then Rivka is simply Eishes Achiv, right? Eishes Ach, and that's a Chayiv Karis. Whereas the other opinion is that it's mitzvahs essay, which is understood that just like Shimon vis-a-vis Rivka would be an essay in that build one house, implying don't build a second house, and lava essay. And so Mandamar Bekaris Kirish Lakish Mandamar Be'esei Ki Rabbi Yochanan. So the Mandamar who says that Chayiv Karis, it's like Kirish Lakish who says that Shimon, we don't view Shimon as the messenger of everybody else, as the representative of everybody else. Mandamar Be'esei Ki Rabbi Yochanan. The Mandamar who says that it's an essay is like Rabbi Yochanan who says that we view Shimon as the representative of everyone. Therefore, just like Shimon would be an essay, so also Levi would be an essay. Let's go weiter. Amar Yehuda Amar Rav, says Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav. Tsaras Sota Oy Vavoy Asura. What do you want me to tell you? What does this mean? Who can tell me what this means? Does it mean I need another Advil? No, it doesn't. Well, no, it doesn't. Because the first Advil is doing just fine, but, this is why we need the Advil. Alright. So, Reuven. Givaldik. Reuven married to Sarah and Rivke. Givaldik. Here's the catch. Rivke is a sota. Right? Rivke had a relationship with somebody else. There were witnesses. She's a sota. So, Rav Rav says, then Rav Tzara sota asura. So, not only does Rivka the sota not do Yibum with Shimon, also her co-wife Sarah as well is not going to do Yibum either, because Tuma Ksiv, but it says Tuma in the context of a sota, Ka'arayas, just like Arayas, right? Meaning by Eishesach, it also says Tuma. So I believe it doesn't say Tuma by Eishesach, but it says Tuma in the context of Arayas. So therefore, just like by Arayas, it's Tuma, and there's a Chiyuv Karis, and there's no Yibum with the Erva, with the Tzara. So here as well, by the Sota, there's no Yibum with Rivka the Sota. There's also no Yibum with Sarah the Tzara. Now, Mosiv Rav Chizda Asakasha. Ready for this? Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon, Bi'asa o chalitzasa me'achiv shal rishon poteres tzarasa. Okay, who can tell me what this case is? Well, here it is. Here's the case, friends. You ready? Woo, okie dokie. Reuven, Givaldik. Reuven is married to Sarah and Rivka. Great. Reuven decides he's going to go search for his fortune in Constantinople and Timbuktu, far away. And he goes far away, and sure enough, some witness comes by a short time later and says, look, Reuven's dead. And when it comes to in a guna to allow sort of a chained woman, somebody who's like kind of stuck, to be able to get married to somebody else, so even one witness is enough. So one witness comes and says Reuven is dead. Okay, fine. Rivka then goes and marries Levi, some random guy Levi. Okay. Now Reuven shows up. Turns out he's not dead. So what happens? So Rivka had gone along and got married, quote unquote, to this random guy Levi, but they obviously weren't actually married because Reuven was still alive, so she was still married to Reuven. So the quote unquote marriage to this random Levi guy is nothing because Reuven was alive and she was still married to Reuven. But we also say that she should get a get from Reuven as sort of like a kind of like almost like a fine or whatever to just make sure that you're going to do as much research as you can before getting married, remarried in this case. Okay, fine. But what if Reuven dies before there's a chance to have a get or anything like that? So basically, you have this situation which is almost as if it's almost like a sota. It's much different than a sota, obviously, but it's a situation of a woman who had a relationship with another man while still married to the first man, right? And we say, so in this case, we say that really Rivka should just, get a divorce from Reuven and break that up, but Reuven dies. So we're saying if Rivka does Yibum or Chalitza with Reuven's brother Shimon, so then it's Poter Sareh, the Tzareh, and she doesn't need to do Yibum or Chalitza or anything like that. So what do we see? So we have a case which is kind of similar to Sota in that you have a woman who's having a relationship with another man outside of the context of her current marriage, and yet the Tzara seems to be, in the parsha of Yibum. So that's the kasha, right? So let's start from the beginning of the Gemara. So Marav Tzaras Sota Asura. So that Sarah, who's the Tzara of Rivka the Sota, she doesn't do Yibum. Tuma Ksivba, because it says Tuma by Sota. Karayos, just like Arayos, that there's no Chalitza or Yibum or anything like that. So, and also the Tzara as well. Master Rav Chizda asks kasha. Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon, Biaso Chalitzasa me'echov shel Rishon, that if Rivka, who married this random Levi guy, and then it turns out that Reuven is really still alive, and then really they're supposed to get divorced, but he dies, and then if Shimon does Yibum or Chalitza with Rivka, so then, right, Biaso Chalitzasa, so the Yibum or the Chalitza of Rivka, Me'achiv Shal Rishon with Shimon, who died's brother, Poteres Tzarasa makes Sareh potter from Yibum and Chalitza. So we see that Sareh, who's Ke'ilu, like the Tzara of Asota, is still shaykh to Yibum, so it's a kasha on Rav. So Amalach Rav will say to you, Alachana Sota D'Oraisa, V'Atomati Sota D'Rabanan. I'm talking about Sota D'Oraisa. I'm talking about an actual, real, live Sota. And you're telling me about Sota D'Rabanan. You're telling me about Rivka, who was allowed, a witness came and said that Reuven died. She was allowed to marry this Levi guy. But in order, as like an extra layer that we want people to just be super careful, so we say, really she, we should, she should get divorced from him. She's also to original husband, kind of like a Sota is also to original husband, but this isn't an actual Sota case. So says Rav, I'm talking about an actual Sota, and you're telling me dir Abanan Sotas. With the Karila, my Karila, well then, when Rav Chizda asked the question, how come he was assuming that like it would be a good question from a Dirabanan kind of Sota? I just want to point out that was like an important part that I didn't highlight enough initially, that, right, the point being that because the idea of Rivka being unable, having to get a divorce from Reuven is that it's Ki'ilu, it's like a Sota, right? That a Sota has a relationship with another man, she's also now to her husband. So here also, right, Rivka was also to Reuven that she was supposed to get a divorce, right? So it's like Ki'ilu, it's a Sota. So now how come Rav Chizda thought that was a good question to bring a question from this Dirabanan Sota, so to speak? So, Kasavar called the Takun Rabbanan Kin Daraisa Takun. Well, Rav Chizda figured that we have a principle that called the Takun Dirabanan Kin Daraisa Takun, that whenever there's a Takana Dirabanan, it's Ki'ilu, it was Daraisa. And if it was Ki'ilu, it was Daraisa, so then I may have thought that it was a good question to ask the kasha from this situation of Reuven, who we thought was dead, because if it's Dirabanan, it's like Daraisa, so it's a good question. Most of Rav Ashi asks a question. Nichnisa imo l'seisa v'shasa imo kidei tuma. That if Sarah were to, right, if Sarah is a sota, right, so if there was only one witness, that she secluded herself with like this random guy Levi, v'shasa imo kidei tuma, and she spent enough time in that room that they could have slept with each other, asur levesa, then she's now asur to her husband Ruvain, vasur lechol b'truma, and she's also, if Ruvain was a Kohen, she's not allowed to eat truma anymore. V'im meis, and if Ruvain dies, choletzes v'lo misyabemes, she does chalitza, but she doesn't do yibum. So what do we see? So here we have a situation of a sota, right? She was secluded in a room with this guy Levi, and we're saying that yibum, right? Choletzes v'lo misyabemes, she dafka does chalitza. So we see that yibum and chalitza, is relevant. For whatever reason, she doesn't do yibum, but she does chalitza. So Amalach Rav, so Rav says, Aminalach Ana Sota Vadeva Amart Li At Sota Sofik. He says, look, I'm talking about a Vadai Sota, a Sota that there were two witnesses that said that she was with this guy Levi. Here you tell me about a Sofik Sota that one person says so. So therefore, again, so Rav is saying that when it comes to a 100% sota situation, in that case, Rivka's Sarah would be, would not do chalitza or yibum. But I guess though when it, if there's a suffix sota, so then sure, maybe she'll do chalitza. Fine. Umayshna sota vadai, and how come when it comes to a sota vadai, we say that there would be no chalitza or yibum? Mishum dichsiv ba tuma. Well, because it says tuma, right? It says, what does it say? The pasuk says, "V'nistra v'hinet ma." That she secluded herself and she's tummy. Wait, but I think that there's another pasuk. I think it's coming from the fact that it says. Wait 1 second. I think it's coming from the. Let me just find this for sure. But anyways, I think it's coming from the pasuk that says. Wait, is that the pasuk? V'nistar v'hinit ma. 1 second. I thought that was by a suffix. Okay, yeah. So I think it's coming from the pasuk of v'nistar v'hinit ma, that she was secluded and she became tummy. So it says in the context of a sota v'hinit ma, that she became tummy, and it also says tuma by arayos, and therefore it's tuma, and therefore there's no yibum, not for her, not for the tzara. So again, so mashna sota vadai. So how can we say that when it's certainly a sota? Rav is saying that there's no yibum or chalitza, not for her, not for the tzara. Mishum dichsiv ba tuma, because it says tuma, right? V'nistar v'hinit ma. Sota sofik nami tumaksiva ba. But 1 second, by a sota sofik, it also says tuma, and therefore I would think that even by a suffix sota, where there's only one witness, also there would be yibum. There should be no yibum and no chalitza, just like, right? It says tuma. It's just like an erva. There should be no yibum and no chalitza by a suffix sota either. The Tanya is we learn in the Brayso. So Yosef ben Kippur almost says Yosef ben Kippur, Mishum Rabbi Lazar. Hamarze grushaso, that if Ruvain was married to Sarah, Ruvain divorces Sarah. Sarah then gets married to some guy named Levi, and then either Levi dies or they get divorced. So minanisuin asura. So if Levi and Sarah mamish got married, so then Ruvain would not be allowed to remarry her. Mina erisin muteris. But if Sarah and Levi only got engaged, so then she would be able to come back to Ruvain. Because if we look at that pasuk, right? Let's see. Do we have his pasuk? Whatever it is. Basically, what the psukim say over there, I think in Parshas Kisei say exactly this: that if you have a woman, right? Ruvain and Sarah are married. they get divorced. Sarah then goes, right? So they're allowed to get remarried. So if Sarah and Reuven get divorced, they can always get remarried. But if Sarah then marries Levi, so then they're not that. That's it. Right? Then they can't get remarried anymore. So now it says Rabbi Yosef ben Kippur that it depends. So if Sarah and Levi, some random guy named Levi, got mamish married, so then she wouldn't be allowed to go back to Reuven. Min ha'erisin muteris. But if they only got engaged, so then Sarah would be allowed to go back to Reuven. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, achrei asher hu tama'ah, because it says in the pasuk that the reason why she's not allowed to go back to Reuven is because she already became tameh. Kilu, she already had bia with, she was already slept with and lived with Levi. That's why she can't go back to Reuven. But if it was just, Erison, they were just engaged, betrothed, so then she would be allowed to go back to Reuven. And the Chacham say, Achaz zo ve'achaz zo asura. No, both, whether it's from Nisuin, whether it's from Erison, right? Whether Sarah Mamish got married to this guy Levi, or whether, remember, Levi is not a brother and no relationship to Reuven, right? So whether Sarah actually Mamish got married to Levi, or whether it was just engaged, it doesn't matter. She's not allowed to come back to Reuven. So then what's pshat? What do we learn with achrei asher hu tama'ah? That Rabbi Yosef ben Kippur said that means that dafka they have to live together. But the Chacham seem to be saying even if it was only engagement, she can't go back to Reuven. So the Rabbi sota shenistera, so to include a sota who was just suspected of adultery, i.e. there was only one witness, it's a suffix sota. Even in that case, she would be asura lebaila, because it says that she's asura to her husband, and we're learning that out from acharei asher hu tama'ah. So we see that even a suffix sota is considered tumah, and if it's considered tumah, so then that should be asur in yibum and chalitza. So I mean, just like if it says tumah, so then it's just like an ervan should not be shaykh to yibum and chalitza. Yet we had said a few minutes ago that no, a vadai sota is parted from yibum and chalitza and her tzara according to Rab, but a suffix would be shaykh to at least chalitza. So my nistera nivala. So we would say no, that nistera over here means that mamish nivala, right? That meaning a vadai sota is that's what we're talking about, and therefore this tumah is by a vadai sota, not by a suffix sota. But my kari le nistera, then why does it say nistera if it's really nivala? So lishnim al yonakat, well, because we wanted to have a little bit of a cleaner language, so we said nistera instead of nivala, but really it does mean nivala. And this by sota, when we're talking about tumah and talking about in which case it would be like an erva and there's no yibum or chalitza, so that's talking about nivala. Okay, so but nivala tumah beja ksivba v'nistera v'hinitma. But when it comes to nivala, if it comes to if she's a vadai sota, so it already says tumah, right? It says it says v'nistera v'hinitma, that she was secluded and she became tameh, and that's talking about vadai. So by nivala it already says tumah. So why do I need when the pasuk says pasuk, where are you? Acharei asher hu tama'ah. Why do we need that? Why do we need that to be talking about a vadai sota shenivala? It already says minister avinitma, that's talking about nivala. So make them all a belav to teach that it is also a lav, right? That by saying, right, acharei asher hu tama'ah, it says lo yucha baila harishon asher shulcha loshuv lekachta. So we see that he's not allowed to go back and take her. So we see this is adding to the fact that it's also going to be a lav. So according to the Chacham, that they say acharei asher hu tama'ah, and that's referring to a sota vadai, right, shenivala. So the point being that it's going to be a lav. Rabbi Yosef ben Kippur lav besota leisle, Rav Yosef ben Kippur says that, right, that there is not this concept of a lav by a sota. Vafilu zanoi, even if she certainly, committed adultery with this fellow, my time hakam, vafilu zanoi nami, my time hakam, havoya v'ishus ksiva, because it says by this lav of lo yucho baila rishon asher loshav lekachta. So it says over there v'hoisa liish acher, that she will beat to another man, o kiyamus haish, or this man. So Kilu says avoya v'ishus ksiba, that they have to mamish be married, which is not the case by a sota. So it's specifically talking about when what are we talking about? Sarah? We're talking about Rivka. Who could remember Sarah? I think, right? So Reuven was married to Sarah, and then so if she gets married to some other person, so then she can't come back. But it's not talking about sota, where that's znus, it's adultery. So the lav does not apply over there. So now it says the Gemara, Ba'amine Rav Yehuda Rav Sheshes, Gevaldig. So I think the Advil is kicking in, and even though theoretically I should have a splitting headache right now, I think I'm doing fine. I'm looking at the Advil, I'm getting the box, I'm getting inspiration. I think I'm doing okay. Ba'amine Rav Yehuda Rav Sheshes. So now Rav Yehuda asks a kasha from Rav Sheshes. Hamachzek Rushaso, Mishanises, Vames, Sarasa Mayahu. Wow. Explosions of the mind. Well, I mean, it's not any more difficult than any of the other stuff. So, what are we talking about? Nothing so crazy, honestly. You have Reuven. Well, crazy is relative. You have Reuven. Reuven is married to Sarah and to Rivka. All right. Now, Reuven divorces Rivka. Rivka then goes and marries some random guy named Levi. Great. Levi dies, or they get divorced, whatever it is. Now, Reuven's not allowed to remarry Rivka because she went and got married to some guy named Levi, who's not related to Reuven in any way, but some random guy named Levi. So, but then Reuven then remarries Rivka nonetheless. Reuven then dies. They don't have any children. So the question is, what's the deal with Sarah the Tzara, right? The co-wife Sarah, who's just been around the whole time. Does she have any zika with Shimon, with Reuven's brother Shimon? That's the question, friends. Ba'amina Rav Yehuda Rav Sheshes, Rav Yehuda Taka asked Rav Sheshes, Amachzik Rushaso Mishanises. So if Reuven remarries Rivka after she already went ahead and married some dude named Levi after they had gotten divorced, right? Meaning Reuven and Rivka had gotten divorced. Rivka went ahead and married some random dude named Levi. They got divorced, or he died, or whatever it is. She now comes back, and even though she's not allowed to, she gets remarried to Reuven. Okay? Vames. Reuven now dies. Sarah Samau, what's the dealio with Sarah? Does Sarah do Yibum? Does she have a Zika with Shimon, Reuven's brother Shimon, or not? So Aliba de Rabbi Yosef ben Kippur. So according to Rabbi Yosef ben Kippur, lo tibailach. The answer is obvious. Kevan Dam Rabbi Yosef ben Kippur Tuma b'machzik gushasu dichsiva. Since Rabbi Yosef ben Kippur says that when the pasuk says acharei asher hu tama'a, which is talking about Tuma, and it's talking about when Rivka gets married to Levi, so then we're talking about Tuma over here. Tzarasa kimosa. Well, just like by a case of Tuma, by a case of Erva, so then the co-wife doesn't do Yibum or Chalitza either. So certainly here as well, Sarah, according to Rabbi Yosef ben Kippur, Sarah would not do would have no zika with Reuven's brother Shimon. V'mishum dichsiv ba to'eva hi. And if you're going to say, yeah, but it says in the pasuk by machzir grushaso to'eva hi, that she is an abomination, and maybe you can argue that she is an abomination to the exclusion of Sarah. Sarah is not an abomination. Maybe she would have a zika with Shimon. No. Hi to'eva ve'in bonea to'evin. It means that Rivka is a to'eva, it is an abomination, but not her children. Her children, they could still marry Kohanim or whatever it is. But Sarah the Tzara is an abomination, also by association with Rivka, and Sarah also would have no zika with Reuven's brother Shimon. Kiti bailach libeder abonon. The question, however, arises according to the rabbis, because the rabbis said that in this context of machzir grushaso, of remarrying your Rivka who got divorced and then married to this random guy Levi. So according to the rabbis, they said when it says achreu ta'asheru tamah, they said it's talking about something different. It's talking about a sota. So afalgav de amur rabbanon tuma besotu d'chsiv, even though the rabbi said that pasuk of acharei asher utamah is talking about a sota, nonetheless you could argue ein mikriyot midei pshuto. No verse, strays too far from its simple explanation. Even though yes, the drash is that acharei asher utamah is talking about sota, but the fact of the matter is, the simple explanation of the pasuk is it's talking about machzir grushaso, and therefore we would say that there is tumah in the context of machzir grushaso, and therefore just like by an erva, both Rivka and Sarah would not do yibum or chalitza. So the same thing applies here. Oduma came to Iyakar, or maybe they're sticking steadfastly with their drasha. And therefore, if they're saying that Tumah is in the context of Sota, so then that is that. It's not talking about Machzir Grushaso, and therefore Sarah the co-wife would have a zika with Reuven's brother Shimon. So Yikadamri, there are those who say, look, Aliv Rabban lo tibai lach kevin tzakar yakar. There are those who explain it sort of the question differently, which is no. According to the rabbis, they said that when it says achreu asher tamah, it's talking about Sota. So if it's talking about Sota, so then it's not talking about Machzir Grushaso, and then Memele, Sarah would have a zika with Shimon, with Reuven's brother Shimon. The question, however, is according to Rabbi Yosef ben Kippur. What does he say? Afalgav the Amr Rabbi Yosef ben Kippur. Do we say that even though Rabbi Yosef ben Kippur says Tum of Machzir Grushaso hu dichsiva, that even though it says in the context of Machzir Grushaso, of remarrying your divorced wife who then got married to this guy Levi in the meantime, even though it says Tuma over there, but Miet Rachmana he toeva bein saras toeva, I might say, yeah, but the pasuk says that Rivka is an abomination, not her co-wife Sarah. Sarah has a zika with Reuven's brother Shimon. Or Dilma he toeva bein banea toevin. Or maybe we'll say no, Rivka is a toeva, but not her children. Hatzarasa toeva, but her co-wife Sarah is right. Rivka is a toeva, not her children, but her co-wife Sarah is a toeva. So that's what we have to figure out. According to Rabbi Yosef ben Kippur, is Sarah a toeva and not shaykh to Yibam and Chalitza, doesn't have a zika to Shimon? Or do we say that no, Rivka is the toeva, but Sarah would have a zika with Reuven's brother Shimon? So anyways, so that's what we're trying to figure all this stuff out. So Tinisua, Amalei Tinisua. So if Shesha says, Rav Yehuda, look, we have a Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Haisa achas ksher v'achas psula. Okay, if one of them was ksher and one of them was psula, if he does chalitza, he should do chalitza with the psula. If he wants to do yibum, he should do yibum with the kshera. Friends, what's this talking about? Well, Reuven, Shimon, Sarah, and Rivka. Reuven is married to Sarah and Rivka. Reuven dies. Now Shimon comes into the picture. And he's got, now there's, Shimon's trying to figure out now what happens. There's, Sarah and Rivka were both married to my brother Reuven. What do I do now in terms of chalitza and yibum? So we said, I'm going to read that again. If Sarah was kshera and Rivka was psula, now we don't know what this means yet. If Shimon's going to do chalitza, so he should do chalitza with Rivka's psula. If he's going to do yibum, he should do yibum with Sarah, who is kshera. My kshera, my psula. Now we have to define what's kshera and what's psula. So ilay kshera la'ama, psula la'ama. If we say that kshera means generally kshera and psula means generally psula, meaning Sarah who's kshera, it means that she's allowed to marry a Kohen, right? A Kohen is not allowed to marry a divorcee, but a Kohen is allowed to marry a widow. Okay, so we're saying, right, so even though both Sarah and Rivka are widows. But if we're saying that Kshera means that Sarah is Kshera in that she's allowed to marry Kohanim, Rivka is Psula, she's not allowed to marry Kohanim. Maybe she was divorced from somebody else, whatever it might be. So Kevin de Ladide Chazya, my nafka le'mina. But who cares what their status is vis-a-vis Kohanim? Shimon is a Yisrael. Makes no difference to him. What's the difference if who he does chalitza with or who he does yibum with? So elalav kshera kshera lei, psula psula lei. So rather, let's say no. What it means is that Sarah is kosher to him and Rivka is psula to him. Umayniu. What would be a situation where Sarah is kosher to him and Rivka is psula to him? Machze grushaso. Well, let's say it's talking about a situation where Ruvain was married to Sarah and to Rivka. Ruvain and Rivka got divorced. Rivka then went and married some random guy, Ruvain. No, married some random guy, Levi. Levi either died or they got divorced. And then Rivka, even though it's not allowed, Rivka and Ruvain get remarried. And then Ruvain dies. There's no kids. So now Shimon's looking at Sarah and looking at Rivka, and Sarah is kosher to him. Rivka is possible to him. Vikatani, and it's saying V'im hayim miyabim miyabim l'chshera. And if he's going to do yibum, we should do yibum with the kshera, with Sarah. So what do we see? So we see that when it comes to Ma'azah Grushaso, when it comes to a situation where Rivka married some other guy and then comes back, that whole thing. So her Sarah, her co-wife Sarah, is not a toeva, right? Her co-wife Sarah has a zika with Shimon. There you go. Lo la'olam kshera kshera la'ama psula psula la'ama. No, really, it's talking about like the initial way we understood it. That it means that Sarah is kshera in general. She's able to marry Kohanim. She has good yichus. It's intact, her lineage and everything. She's allowed to marry Kohanim, whereas Rivka is not. But didn't we say, yeah, but who cares what their status is vis-a-vis Kohanim? He's a Yisrael. He can marry both of them. Who cares? So who cares, who he does chalitza with or who he does even with? So answer the Gemara, Mishum de Rav Yosef, because of Rav Yosef, Dam Rav Yosef, Kanshana Rebbe, that here Rebbe taught, Lo yishbach adam meiboro b'acherim tzrichim lo'im, that a person should not spill out well water, which of course reminds me of Wellwood, which in our family, right, that's the cemetery, Wellwood. I don't remember if that's the one with the flooding problem. I can't. There's one of the cemeteries has the flooding problem. But Al Kaponim, I live in Eretz Yisrael. I imagine I probably will be buried in Long Island. But anyways, Al Kaponim, we got stuff to do before then. Al Kaponim. So where were we? Wellwood, well water. Rebbe says if you have some well water, even though you don't need it, don't spill it out on the floor because somebody else might need it. And therefore, meaning be considerate. And therefore, what it means is like this: why should Shimon care if Sarah can marry a Kohen or not? Well, because if Shimon does, I hope I didn't say Reuven. We're talking about Shimon here. Reuven's dead. Maybe Reuven's buried in Wellwood, and now we're talking about well water. So Reuven's in Wellwood. Reuven's in Wellwood. Now we got well water, and that's nice. Reuven's in Wellwood. I was trying to think about how I should talk about Reuven dying, kicking the can. Reuven's in Wellwood. All right, Reuven's in Wellwood. That's funny. It's good. It'll be like inside jokes at Babylon Talmud. So somebody will come in the random daf, and I'm talking about Reuven and Wellwood, and they'll be like, "What's he talking about?" Well, you have to know. You have to be here for Daf Yud Aleph to know what we mean. That's what I should do. I should start making inside jokes in the daf, so that it encourages people to listen to every daf. Because if you miss one, you might miss the inside jokes, and then you'll be lost on all the other dafs. So Reuven's in Wellwood, and Shimon is so now Shimon's got Sarah and got Rivka, and Sarah is in general allowed to marry Kohanim, and Rivka is not. So we're saying, look, if he wants to do Yibum, he can do Yibum with Sarah, and then they'll be married, fine. But if he's going to do Chalitza with Rivka, because Rivka already is not allowed, she's Pasul Lakuna, she's not allowed to marry Kohanim anyways, maybe she got divorced from somebody else, whatever it is. Sarah, on the other hand, she's a widow. She can marry a Kohen. And if Shimon does chalitza with Sarah, well then she's a chalutza. She can no longer marry a Kohen anymore. So therefore, what it's saying is if you're going to do Yibum, so fine, you could do Yibum with Sarah. But if you can do chalitza, Dafka do chalitza with Rivka, because Rivka can't marry a Kohen anyways, right? Just like Rebbe's saying, be considerate, right? If you don't need the well water, don't spill it on the floor because maybe somebody else needs it. So you're also like, even if it makes no difference for Shimon, but still, be considerate. And if you could do chalitza with Rivka, do chalitza with Rivka, so that Sarah could still then go ahead and marry Kohen if she wants. So it wasn't necessarily a proof regarding Machzor Grushaso, right? Because we ended up saying no, it doesn't mean that it's talking about Machzor Grushaso, whether or not she's kosher apostle to him. It means kosher apostle in general. It says the Gemara, Tashma Kamanir, HaMachzor Grushaso. So if Reuven remarries Rivka after she already married this guy, random guy Levi, so Misha Nises, and they're already married, Hivitzaraso Choletzes, and then Reuven goes to Wellwood, so then Shimon does Chalitza with Sarah and with Rivka. Now, Hivitzaraso Sagadatich, clearly it's not talking about she and, right, that both Sarah and Rivka do Chalitza, because you only have to do Chalitza with one of them, right? Does Rashi kind of quote, no, he doesn't. Okay. So Ella Ema Ohi O Tsaraso. Rather, it means either her or the Tsar. So what do we see? So we see that when it comes to Machzor Grushaso, Chalitza is shaykh to the Tsar as well, to the Koif as well, right? It says that Rivka got married to this random guy Levi, and then they got remarried, and then Reuven remarried her, even though he wasn't allowed to. And we're saying that if Reuven goes to Wellwood, so then Shimon can do Chalitza either with Sarah or with Rivka. So then we see that Sarah, the co-wife, is shaykh to Chalitza. So it says the Gemara, you already are switching around, adding words and stuff to the brisa. So Tritzachi, explain it like this: He choletzes tzarasa o choletzes o misyabemes. So rather that Sarah either does chalitza or does yibum. Okay, he choletzes tzarasa o choletzes o misyabemes. Apparently, I don't know. It means that it's like kind of inconclusive. All right, fine. That it's like, it's not exactly clear what the tzara does, and therefore you can't necessarily prove anything from it. All right, what do you want me to tell you? Amr Reb Chiya bar Abba says Reb Chiya bar Abba, Reb Yochanan Bai. Reb Yochanan asked the following question: Machzor Grushaso Misha Nises tzara samahu. So if Reuven is married to Sarah and to Rivka, Rivka then marries some random dude, Levi. They get divorced or he dies, and then Reuven remarries her, even though he's not allowed to. So, and then Reuven goes to Wellwood. So what happens? Vis-a-vis Sarah, the co-wife. So Amalei Reb Ami. So Reb Ami says to Reb Chiya bar Abba, V'tibai lachi gufa. Why don't you ask about Rivka herself? Hi gufa lo kami bayali. He says, no, I don't have a question about Rivka. Daminu, we say kal v'chomer. B'muter la asura, b'asur lo kol sheken. No, Rivka certainly is not going to be shaykh in any way to Shimon, because if she wasn't even allowed to get remarried to Reuven, forget about Shimon. I mean, Shimon, if anything, is like Eishasach, forget about it. My. What I'm asking about is Sarah. Do we say that the Kavachomer is so stark, is so strong, to say that just like Rivka is not shaykh to, has no zika to Shimon, so also Sarah has no shaykhis? Or no. Or we say no, Rivka has no zika to Shimon, but Sarah does. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Masniach. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak teaches like this. Reb Chiya bar Abba says, Reb Chiya bar Abba, by Reb Yochanan asked Machzor Grushaso Mishani says that if Reuven remarried Rivka, after she married this random dude, Levi, Mahu, so what happens? But ask about Sarah, the co-wife. No, the Sarah, the co-wife, I'm not asking about, because certainly this kavachom that we said about Rivka being also to Ruvain and certainly then to Shimon, so that's not going to be strong enough to say that Sarah has no zika to Shimon. No, she certainly does. Like you call me Bailey, what I'm asking is he gufa, Rivka. What do we say? Do we say that the kavachomer to say, well, if she wasn't allowed to get married to Reuven, then certainly not to Shimon? Is that strong enough to say that therefore, based on this kavachomer, we're not going to do chalitza or yibum? So Amarle, says, Nobami tries to answer it basically in a similar fashion as we did a few minutes ago. Tinisua, we have this Mishnah, achas kshera v'achas psula. If Sarah was kshera and Rivka was psula, right? Of course, right? Reuven was married to Sarah and to Rivka. Reuven goes to Wellwood. Now Shimon is going to do, he has a zika with Sarah and Rivka. So we said if Sarah was kshera and Rivka is psula, choletz l'psula. If you do chalitza, with Rivka who's psula. V'mayam yabim l'kshera. If he's going to do yibum, he would do yibum with Sarah who's kshera. My kshera, my psula. What does kshera mean? What does psula mean? Ilem kshera la'ama. Psula la'ama. If we could say kshera means that she could essentially marry kohanim, and psula means that that she cannot marry kohanim. Came to l'didechaz manafka lemina. Well, since Shimon is a Yisrael, and he can marry either Sarah or Rivka, so who cares? So let's say that no, it means that Sarah is kosher to him, Rivka is possible to him, and that's talking about machzir grushaso, that Rivka went ahead and married this random dude, Levi, and now Reuven remarries her, and then Reuven goes to Wellwood, and now we have Shimon, and we're saying that Shimon could marry Sarah and not Rivka. So we answer right, feeds two birds with one seed. We see that there is a zika between Sarah and Shimon, and that there is nothing between Sarah and Rivka and Shimon. So and we're saying that if he would do yibum, he would do yibum with Sarah. Lo kshera la'ama, psula la'ama. So we say no. Kshera means that she's able to marry kohanim. Psula means that she's not allowed to marry kohanim. With the comment came to the didei chazia manaf mina. And if you're going to say yes, but since Shimon, is a Yisrael, it doesn't matter whether Sarah or Rivka can marry kohanim or not. So who cares? Mishum to Rav Yosef, because of Rav Yosef, Rav Yosef, kan shana Rebbe leishboch adam mebaro v'achem tzuchim loim. The Rebbe teaches that a person should not pour out his well water if his friend needs it, i.e. be considerate. And therefore, if Shimon's going to do chalitza, he should do chalitza with Rivka, who already is not allowed to marry Kohanim, but Sarah, who is allowed to marry Kohanim, leave her alone so that she could still be able to marry Kohen, because if he does chalitza with her, she's a chalutza and she can't marry a Kohen. Okay, so that had nothing to do with Machzir Grushaso, it only had to do with kshera la'ama, psul la'ama, so therefore there's no proof. Tashma kamnira machzir grushaso, that if Reuven remarries Rivka Mishanises after she was already married to Levi, he v'tzaras choletzes, so then Sarah and Rivka both do chalitza. He v'tzaras sagadatech. Why would Rivka and Sarah do chalitza? Ela ema ohi o tzarasos. Let's say either he or tzaras. We see that Sarah is shaykh to chalitza. V'lav tutze kam taratz dale. Nu din you already have to switch around the brisa. Tritzachi, answer it like this: he choletzes tzaras o choletzes o misyabemis, that Rivka does chalitza, but Sarah either does chalitza or yibum, i.e. it's unclear, it's inconclusive, we don't know what happens with Sarah, so yeah, it's inconclusive. Friends, that was Daf Yud Aleph of Masechta Yevamos. The first part of the daf talked about the machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish about, should we even go there? I'm not even going there. The machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, and then we then talked about a sota. That Rav says that a sota is basically like an erva, and the co-wife also is not shaykh to yibum. And then we started talking about situations of machzir grushaso that we're trying to figure out that if there's Machzir Grushaso, what happens with the co-wife? Does the co-wife do Yibum or Chalitza or not? We didn't have necessarily a conclusive answer. I think that the Advil worked decently. My head is like not falling apart, so that I guess is success in some sense. Peace out.